So, this is an interesting situation because when we looked at the horse without a rider and we could prove that the tree was too wide in the front, the saddle was dropping down and the back was popping up. But she gets on the horse and rides, and you can obviously tell that the saddle's too low in the back, so it doesn't really make sense, does it? But what does make sense is what we talked about, is the saddle rides up and forward over the shoulders and lifts the front artificially and dumps the rider into the chair seat. So this is very, very disturbing for the horse, and it's very hard for them to lift and push up through the back when they have that much pressure in the back of the saddle. So this is before we've adjusted the saddle, and then we'll do a film, of course, explaining why we did it and what we did to it, and then you can see the result afterwards. Nicole, can we get a little bit of trot? Yes. And you see the pinned back ears, the unhappy horse. This can definitely be caused by the saddle, so that's why it's so very important that we take care of this and fix it. And you can see how much there's too much bounce in the back of the saddle as well. So when the horse actually starts moving, that's where we see that problem of too wide of a tree in the front, and so it doesn't stabilize the saddle. The problem we're having with the saddle is the complaint is that it's too low in the back when the rider rides. But if we look at the balance of the saddle, and also the fact if I push on here that the back pops up, that the width of the tree and probably also a little bit of the angle is too wide, so it actually is dropping down. But then we have to think, well, why am I getting a different description from the rider? Well, so I had Nicole ride, and what is happening is the saddle slides forward up here, so it raises the front of the saddle and drops it down in the back. So if you push on here, see, it doesn't move. But we now have the saddle sitting on the top of the horse's shoulders, which is not good at all, because the shoulders are always under pressure. They're having to slide back and forth underneath a solid steel part of the saddle. So what we're going to do is, because the saddle is too wide in width and angle, I'm going to bring that in, and that will help the saddle to stay back, as well as we're going to change where the billets are coming out on the saddle, because the more forward the billets are, the more it will keep to pull the saddle back. And we'll ride again, and then we'll see what happens. So a question that a lot of owners ask me, clients that have bought in saddles, is that how do I know when my saddle is ready for a new adjustment? Well, I did show you the one test that if you push on here and the front drops down and the back pops up, then yes, you definitely need some help. And you can see what happens now that we have the horse girthed up. This was the saddle that if you push on the pommel, the back popped up. See how it's permanently popped up. So you don't want to see this. Now, some horses that have some back issues, we might leave this a little bit light so we don't have a lot of pressure back there, but we would never do it this much. So if you tighten up your girth especially and see that pop up like that, then please have your saddle looked at and have it adjusted. So the issue that we have with the saddle on Talisman is that this width right here on each side of the wither is not bad at all, but the angle's a little bit wide, and that's why it allows that saddle to drop down and rock like that. So we need to stabilize that. And that's one of the unique properties of the Horobin saddles, which I believe in 100%, because horses change throughout their whole life. It's either because of their youth and they're growing, or it's because the way you ride them or the way you don't ride them. This changes a lot within a year usually, okay? Sometimes quicker on the younger horses. So what I'm able to do is I'm going to push this, I've turned this sideways, so it's going to keep the width of the tree at the top, but I want to bring the angle in, so we're belling it. We call it belling it around. Some people, I think, call it a hoop type shaped gullet clip. But the ability that I can change the width and the angle is very, very important. So if you watch, you should be able to see these sides coming in. And the ability to do it right here on site, so the rider can ride and then we can test it again, is very, very important in my opinion, because you need to see how the saddle acts and with the rider on board. Okay, there we go. We'll put it back on the horse and see how it works. So now you saw me adjust the saddle, and we're going to put the saddle where it belongs. And just so everybody knows, because I get this question, where do you put the saddle? So start up with the saddle way too far forward, slide it back, and where it kind of locks in is where it belongs. So the edge of the panel of the saddle should be right behind the shoulder, and then you've got the tree point is even beyond that. So you always hear about the saddle being 2 fingers behind the wither, or behind the scapula, which is true, but you're talking about the tree point, not the panels. The panels will almost always come up to the edge of the scapula, but your tree point is back here. So it's 2 fingers back from the shoulder of the tree point. So you can just check it in the front here. This should come to the edge of it. Okay, it always will. Okay, now I showed you that saddle test, that if you push here and if the back flops up, you know that your saddle is too wide. So now that I've adjusted it, I'm going to try that again. Now I'm putting all my weight on this and I can't get it to move. So that's what you want. So now this is going to help the saddle stay behind the shoulder so it doesn't run up and tip the rider behind. And now we're going to look at billet placement. So when your billets are too far back, say both your billets are this far back, and they're attached to your girth up here, it's going to pull the saddle forward so this lines up to the girth groove. So that's why we're going to change these and move these forward. So the girth isn't helping to pull the saddle forward as well, because the saddle belongs back there. So this one's not badly placed, but I'm going to move this one up here just to help that saddle stay back. And then next video you'll see Nicole ride, and we'll see how this works. Okay, so here we have Nicole aboard Talisman after we have adjusted the saddle, and we've got it now so it's staying back off of the shoulders. We're still seeing a little bit of movement in the back, which is fine. That'll settle down more and more as the flocking does as she rides. But now she feels like she can stay over her leg more, and the horse looks happy in the saddle. We're not seeing quite that angry look on his face. Sometimes his ears go back, but sometimes he's just listening to her, so he's looking very nice, and what a nice horse he is. There we go, and that's one thing I want to be able to see. Can you stretch him a little bit more, Nicole? It always tells me that the horse has plenty of room over the trapezius, that the gullet plate isn't trapping the trapezius if the horse is willing to go down and out, because that shows me he's got a lot of room there and he feels comfortable doing it. He's a young horse in training, so it's a little sporadic right now, but the fact that he's willing to do it is a really good sign. When horses are being pinched because the tree is too narrow or the angle is too wide and dropping too much pressure on the trapezius, the horse wants to bring his neck back and up so it helps him to drop his back. So this is a really good sign.